Welcome back to part 2 with Kelley.
Hi, it's good to be here. Well, Will, welcome to the
I'm
podcast.
also here. I'm back. This is my 3rd episode now. I'm so happy to be here. Oh my goodness. Okay, so what are we doing today, guys? Why aren't you talking? It's a podcast. We're supposed to be talking.
Leave this in. So we talked a lot about different experiences
Yeah.
you've had.
Yeah.
The absolute state of the states in terms of education.
Yeah.
And something that you mentioned in the last episode that we did not get to is that you went to Algeria.
Yes, I did. I
Please,
did go to
tell us
Algeria.
more.
Yeah. So Algeria, if you're unaware, is in between Morocco and Tunisia in North Africa. It's not Nigeria. It's not Albania. Okay, it's Algeria.
It's kind of a mix of both in a way.
Yeah, no.
Oh, not at all? Okay,
Yeah, no,
it's
no,
actually
no.
very
Do
different.
people get them mistaken for each
people,
other?
I would say
It's
like
Americans, Alden.
Yeah,
We know how
yeah.
they are.
Well, I would say
Okay.
like, oh, I'm going to Algeria, and they'd be like, Nigeria. I said Algeria. I did not say it. Yeah.
We get that too.
Yeah.
How's Thailand?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So it's an opportunity to educate and to inform. So as we talked about before on part 1, I was in DC for 3 years teaching the public schools. And then I applied to this program. It's a U.S. State Department exchange program called the English Language Programs. And it was the teaching fellowship. So it's like a 10-month program, similar to many exchange programs, right? And so it's I could only choose regions of the world, and so I chose like many regions, and North Africa was one of them. And they placed me in Oran, which it's in the west part of Algeria, kind of close to Morocco, across from Spain. Okay, you guys can all Google it and look it up. And it's the second largest city in Algeria after Algiers, which is the capital. And the French name, because they speak lots of different languages in Algeria, but the dominant ones are French and then Algerian Darija. And so Oran, the French name is Oran, but the Arabic name is Waharan. So I'd just like to refer to it as Waharan, if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And so I was there, I was training future teachers. So I was teaching at a university, a teacher's college, training undergraduate students. I was teaching them teaching pedagogy and writing. And at one point I taught literature. And I was doing workshops and stuff too. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're obviously a native English speaker.
I am.
And you mentioned that Algeria uses French and Arabic in
Yeah.
its everyday life. So
True.
What were you doing? What were you using?
Thank you for asking. Well, I'm originally from Ohio. If anyone's familiar, we don't really speak other languages in Ohio besides English, unfortunately. But I did take French classes in high school, and then I took a little bit of French in undergrad. But again, I didn't have a lot of opportunity to speak it. And so I was really excited to go to Algeria and to get to practice French. But then I very quickly learned French is mostly spoken in Algeria in Algiers, it's more common. But then in Oran they speak Darija, which is it's like
Oh, not French or Arabic.
so well it is Arabic. So Darija, so Arabic. If people are familiar with Arabic like Fusha Arabic, like the Arabic that's used in the Quran, like it's almost like, okay, people, you can come for me, okay? But it's like kind of like Latin, right? So it's like, that is not really spoken, but so the Arabic dialect spoken in North Africa and then in Syria and in Iraq and in Palestine, like those are like, in Egypt is like more what's often taught.
Yeah.
Like Egyptian Arabic.
Yeah,
but
it's
they're
the largest Arab country,
right.
I think, right? So
well,
that makes
it's
sense.
like it's the most dominant. They have kind of like they are mostly the ones teaching Arabic. For some reason, their type of Arabic is the one that's often taught. People know more about this than I do. But but there are many different dialects of Arabic. And so the one it's the Algerian Arabic, they also call it Darija. And so it's a combination of of like Fusha Arabic, but then also like classical Arabic, but then, well, I don't know if it's, okay, I don't know. But it's like Arabic and then French and then some Spanish in the West. And the dialects are all different throughout Algeria, but they can understand each other. They'll argue with me about this too, which is fine. Please, everyone argue. Everybody watch and argue. Like, go ahead.
Discuss in the comments.
Yes, discuss in the comments. Algerians.
What's your favorite type of Arabic? That's our question for today.
Which dialect do you like the most in Algeria? Okay, like they have
Arabic,
opinions.
yeah.
So I learned some, which was so fun, but it took me a long time to learn it because there's not a lot of there aren't a lot of resources to learn Darija and to learn Algerian like Arabic. So I would ask people, please teach me. And I had no Arabic background. So I would take classes and then I would go speak with my friends and they'd say, Kelley, you're speaking Fusha. Like, you're speaking classical Arabic. And I'd be like, what? Like, why are they teaching me that? And over and over it would happen to me. People, because it's their home language, right? Mm-hmm. So they don't sit in a classroom and learn it. So people didn't really know how to teach me. And we'd just be like walking on the street and then be like, okay, this is how you say this. This is how you say this. And then I'd be like, okay. And then a week later they'd say, okay, how do you say that? And I'd be like, I don't remember because how, and even like the writing, you know, the sounds are so different. Like coffee is like kahwa, kahwa. Or like, you know, like the H, they're like different like sounds. And they have like 3 sounds. Like it's like ha, ha, ha. And they'd be like, that's not right. Argue in the comments. But they would like, you know, be like, oh, it's so funny. You can't say it right, you know? So I wouldn't even know how to like write it correctly. And so it took me a long time. And then my friend started tutoring me. I was really resisting having an American teach me. But then finally I was like, I need some. And that changed my life. So I can say some things. Like I could say like, mostly to taxi drivers and mostly to order. You know, I could be like, Atani Karantika. Like Karantika is one of their street foods. Or I could be like, you know, I could say Ana Kelley, that means I'm Kelley. Ana Ustada, I'm a teacher. Like important things. Ana Maricania, you know, I'm an American. Yeah. So I would mix French and Arabic, like so I could speak more French, and it was like in my brain. Like even though I hadn't been in a French class in so long, like when I went to Algeria, it was suddenly like it just was like in my brain. So I can say some things, you know. So I would mix French and Arabic, and even now, like I went to Egypt in January, and I was just trying to speak Arabic. And I couldn't, it was so hard. I couldn't do it. Or like, even if I go to France, it was hard for me to not only speak French. Like, it's like the languages are mixed in my brain. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you went from, when did you leave Algeria? You were in Algeria until?
I left Algeria in July.
July of this year.
This year.
So you've pretty much, not literally, but pretty much you've gone straight from Algeria to here in Taiwan.
Yep.
So that's quite a big transition. That's quite a big change.
Yep, the cultures are basically the opposite of one another.
Could you elaborate on that? Like what are some things that make them different?
Totally. Well, I had pretty intense whiplash. I wouldn't call it culture shock. I would call it like, cultural whiplash. So when I arrived, I hardly speak any Chinese. And so I arrived, and then a week after I arrived, well, it's just like, first of all, like I could navigate the metro system and the buses like fully on my own, which in Algeria, there isn't the same type of infrastructure. So like, I couldn't like take a bus by myself. I didn't take taxis by myself. I would use like other Uber like apps. But it was like automatically I could navigate all the systems in Taiwan. But and like a week after I got here, I applied for the ARC, the residency card, by myself, which unthinkable in Algeria. That was like, took me 1.5 years to like be able to go and navigate that system by myself, because Algeria is Taiwan is also, I think most cultures besides the US and maybe some European countries are very communal, right? But Algeria is so communal. And I think what I didn't realize until after I came here was, like, I was doing everything by myself here in Taiwan, but I was doing it all by myself. Like, I could not talk to anyone, you know? I could, like, you know, people were so polite. I felt like sometimes in Algeria, I didn't want to be perceived. I would try to blend in. And surprisingly, I could in Algeria. I actually could blend in because some of the indigenous groups in Algeria look like me. So it's like maybe the OG white people. I don't know. So like I could not speak. I could go into a store, and sometimes people might think maybe I'm French, but sometimes they would think I was Kabyle or like one of the indigenous
Wow.
groups. So I could kind of fly under the radar.
Yeah, you won't get that here, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think I'm pretty good at verbal cues. So I'd be like, yeah, and like they wouldn't know that I didn't understand, but I'd be like, I got enough, you know. But also the thing about Algeria is that like people would do anything to help me, like, and not that doesn't happen here, but people don't want to intrude into your space, okay? But in Algeria, it's like if you're not intruding into somebody's space, you're being rude. So like I was like, oh my god, I'm lonely. Like and you know, I thought maybe I could use a little space to be lonely, but in Algeria, I was like never lonely, not for a moment, maybe for a couple moments, but mostly like, yeah. So that was a really interesting difference. But then also when I went to the MRT and people were lining up to get on, that was like, I was like, oh wow, I'm not in the US anymore. You know, we don't do that there. So that was like a little bit of a culture shock. I was like, oh wow.
Yeah, you're living in Taipei, so that kind of makes sense. You know, it's fascinating because the element of the infrastructure, the element of the city being so, you know, sort of polished as it is,
Sure.
In terms of like the transit system and everything else is oddly isolating in a way. And I mean, also Taiwan does have that individualistic aspect of, you know, like everyone has a scooter, everyone you know, has a car, like they've got their own.
Yeah, everything seems so designed to be able to be done by yourself.
Yes.
Especially for tourists, especially for visitors. You can do it in English.
yeah.
Like,
That's true.
Yeah, I was really impressed as well with the way that like you could just show up and like make a bank account and you know, get your ARC and get do all these things. It's like, I imagine you probably have helpers for things like that in Algeria. I'm
for
not
sure. Yeah. Well, I've been thinking a lot about this because I think too, what I really miss is in Taipei specifically, I'm kind of in an expat bubble, you know, and I really miss, like in Algeria and in Oran, where I was in Wahran, like it was only Algerians. Like I was only around Algerians.
There was no bubble to get into.
No bubble. There's no bubble. Yeah. And I mean, with that, I really was so immersed in the culture, and that was sometimes the greatest challenge, but it was also like the best part of the experience as well. And I think here, while I really enjoyed like how easy everything is, I do miss, like it's been hard for me to break into like how do I make friends who are local people and without being like intrusive or like violating their space too. And I imagine that people in other cities besides Taipei, that's a little bit easier, or like maybe people who are ETAs who are here. It
is certainly easier as an ETA or an ETF, especially in communities that exist outside of Taipei, because it's again there's no bubble. So there's this element of convenience that Taipei has and that Taiwan has, but mostly Taipei. And while convenience is nice, it lacks that sense of community and it lacks that sense of like needing to talk to someone. And so it's actually super fascinating because I remember I was given an option in my second year here to go to Taipei or to go to Kaohsiung. And I chose Kaohsiung, partially because in the back of my mind, I knew I wanted that sort of semblance of community a little bit more. And even though the air quality was atrocious and I was literally working in the middle of like a petrochemical factory complex area.
That sounds... Okay.
I wouldn't take it back. I wouldn't take it back because those students were just so incredible in the community. Like those teachers were incredible too. Like just excellent people. The principal, like all of them, so nice. Kind of reminded me of what you were experiencing in Algeria. And like Taipei is incredible. Like it's
for sure.
Like its public transit is just so much better than anything I've experienced in the States. You know, this country that has all the wealth, all the capability, and Taipei is dunking on them. You know, it's incredible. But even then, they lose that semblance of community.
Well, but I think too, like, I mean, I did want that. Like, that is, I wanted to be in Taipei because I knew like I loved Algeria, but I needed more of that.
Yeah, it's a change. It's a change.
And I needed to be around, I actually needed to be around some foreigners for a little bit. Like, yeah, but I do also miss it. Like, you know, and I'm very curious because you guys have lived abroad in multiple places. And I think what was so fascinating for me in Algeria was it was the first place I'd ever lived abroad.
Which is incredible, by the way.
Yeah,
that is incredible. That is such a big jump. I cannot emphasize that enough.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Like, wow.
So it was kind of intense, and I was like dropped in, and I, you know, and at first there were very obvious like cultural differences, like, you know, but then there were some things that I was like, this makes no sense to me at all, and I'm like so offended. And like, for instance, like some things relating to time, right? So I'm sure you guys have,
yes, it's a very liberal interpretation of scheduling.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so there would be things where I felt like people were like snubbing me, or they were like, you know, they like were ghosting me or different things like that. And I didn't understand, I couldn't understand why this kept happening. Like I was like, I felt very offended and initially, and then over time, it got to a point where like a year and a few months in, I realized, oh, I've adjusted. And it went from me being like, you know, there are things like when you live abroad, it's like you don't know what you don't know. So there's some parts where you're like totally oblivious. You're just like absolutely, like I can look back on things and I'm like, wow, I was so offensive and I had no idea. And then there are times, then it starts to change where like you know what you don't know, but it's like more aware to you.
Yes.
And then there's a time when you're like, I actually understand now, like why this is happening, you know, and like I know, and now I know, you know, and I'm just like curious, and I can be more specific about what I mean if that's, but I'm wondering like if how other people experience this, because I think we all often, if you go to a new country, you choose to live in a new country, you know that you're going to experience that, but you don't really know. It's like anything you've never done before. Like I've never had a kid before, and I could be like, I could imagine what that's like or whatever, but I don't actually know until I do it. You know, like there's so many, and so I feel like I was like, yeah, I'm going to experience culture shock, but I didn't really understand what cultural immersion was. And so it's like, it really like blew my mind. So I don't know if I'm...
No. I totally agree. Like, I think that for me is like one of the major appeals of living abroad is to like understand something like that you don't know. You have no perception of what you don't know. I like the way you said that. Understanding what you don't know. Because that... Otherwise, you would never know that you did not know that.
Yeah. And I went through this kind of like mind warp of like what are my own ideas and what is actually just culturally what I believe. Like what is cultural and what is
the true self.
So who am I? Like, who am I? Because really there were some things that I was like, whoa, like it's so weird. I thought this is just what I think about things. And then I was like, oh no, it's not. And like I just had this kind of like, who's right, who's wrong, what's correct, what's not correct. Like it was just so, and I think in Algeria, it was so different from any other place. And everyone thought that way. Yeah. That was so, like, I was like, wow, my ideas are just not, this is not what's happening here. And it's not like, I don't know. It was just fascinating to me. So,
yeah, and I guess there's also that aspect of being an outsider in a society, especially in one like that. You said that's so orthodox, where you're looking in all the time. Really, you said you can blend in sometimes, but even then, it's still the perspective is still from the outside.
For sure. And to also, I think as an American, it's like so convenient for us to go like everywhere, you know, we're like
Algeria.
And I think that was a really cool experience as a foreigner to have. And like, especially like a white American to like, I definitely had privileges as a white American for sure, as we do everywhere, but also like it was good for me to experience some of the inconvenience of having to apply for a very difficult visa. And like to also
see
be
what everyone else goes through. And
to be othered, and for like transportation to not always be easy, and for me to not always be able to understand the language and things like that. Like it's good, I think.
Like to even have your concept of time changed at least a little bit, because you know, I think about the concept of time like as it relates to the West. Like Will and I kind of, I don't want to like fully speak for you because I don't know enough about South Korea. But the thing is, like, at least here in Taiwan,
Very precise, yeah.
The adoption of that sort of Western standard of like what's on the clock it's present. You know, it's present.
Yeah.
And of course, like Europe has that. Of course, you know, the United States has that. So, you know, our perceptions of time haven't been challenged in the ways that maybe yours have.
Yeah.
You know, again, I can't speak for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing that always gets to me is like whenever I ride a bus, that when you get on, like say the bus is leaving at like 9:25.
Sure.
You get there at 9:23 and the bus is there and you get on and you see the driver is looking at the clock and he's waiting until the clock ticks over to 9:25 to drive away.
That's amazing.
Even from American perspective, that's unreal.
True.
And that's very common. You see that everywhere in Taiwan specifically.
Yeah.
That was something that just I still can't like wrap my head around that really particularly. I mean, it makes perfect sense. A bus is leaving at 9:25.
Yeah.
Want to leave at 9:25.
Totally.
Like,
thank you. That does make sense, actually.
but I still don't understand it.
So you guys feel like your experiences of living abroad, the time, like we're going to leave on time, we're going to arrive on time, that timeliness is like a thing. Like
and it very much bleeds over into myself and the way that I think about time.
Yeah.
And expat groups, and we all, because it's that thing where, what is the phrase? The zealot of a convert. So like I'm losing this.
No, I love it. I love where this is going.
It's an idea that like if you convert to a religion, you're trying way harder than all the people that grew up in that religion.
True.
So it's that same thing with expats with time. That's what I wanted to get back to. It's like when you're in expat groups, we all like chew each other up for like being like 1 minute late to something because we're all like trying so hard to adapt to this new system that we're a part of.
This is the thing, because like so my friends would like often be late, or they'd be like early. They'd be like, okay, we're gonna meet later, and I'd be like, yeah, like 6, like 8, like, and they'd be like, yeah, just later, you know, we're gonna meet later, and I'd be like, oh my god, like when? And it would really be, there's like a fluidity, right? And so that drove me crazy a little bit, and then but over time I started to realize, okay, so I'm just gonna be late because everyone's gonna be late, but it kind of like went against my internal system, you know. I was like, like, okay, I know I have to be late, but like it's hard for me. And now Will could speak to this. Okay, Will and I have had some meetings, and have I ever been on time? Today. Okay, I was like on time today, but like now I've texted my friends. I'm still in like an Algerian group chat, and I'm like, guys, I no longer feel bad for being late. Like it's crazy. It's not like
reprogrammed.
It's actually that I no longer have like this like. There have been times when I'm like, oh God, I should be on time, but I have no guilt. Okay, I have no time guilt.
That's great. That's
it's
great.
Wild. I don't know if it's great, but it is definitely speaks to I was pretty integrated into the culture. So yeah, I do have like a pretty good story. So in December, so Algeria has the biggest Sahara in all of the Sahara. So across the Saharas in Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, like, you know, it's across North Africa. I don't know about Egypt, okay? But Algeria's the biggest country in Africa. Okay, go Google it. Okay, it's like half the size of the United States. It's huge. Anyway, so a common trip that people take is they'll go to the Sahara for New Year's. So my first year, you kind of have to book it ahead of time, and you have to have gear and stuff like that. And so I wasn't prepared my first year, but my second year, I was like, I'm doing it. I'm going. And it's really awesome because the indigenous groups are the only ones who can take you into the Sahara. So they're called the Tuareg, and they'll take you in, and it was just like the most incredible experience. It was like 5 days off grid, like no internet, nothing, like, and they would just like, you drive in with them, and they like, you know, you have like meals every night around the fire, and they play music, and like it's so awesome. And it was the only time, one of 2 times I saw tourists in Algeria. So there were 3 huge French families, and they had all been to all of the Saharas, and they saved Algeria for last because they said like we saved the best for last, you know. But then like there is some like a Dutch Algerian, a German, there was like a few Algerians, but most people lived outside of Algeria. It was just me and my friend. He was another exchange participant. We went together, and we were some of the only people who actually lived in Algeria besides the Tuareg, and like and so there was this one guy, he was like 19, he was Canadian, but he was also Algerian, and he'd visited Algeria many times.
So a lot of the tourists are diaspora Algerians.
Diaspora Algerians, yeah, they live in other places that they would come back. And it is like,
that's interesting.
Like there's this one place we went, it's called Janet, it's part of the Sahara, and it is like a UNESCO intangible heritage site for watching like the sunrise and the sunset. Like it is so incredible. I had like inner peace for the first time in my life, okay? But there was this one night, so this guy, Ryan, from Canada, he was like, came over to me and my friend, and every day they'd be like, okay, we'd get in a car, we'd drive like however many miles, we'd stop randomly, like you'd see, it was like museum en plein air, like you'd see like, it was like, you just stop, like let's pretend we could green screen the wall. I have pictures, okay? And it's like, there's just like a huge, like taller than this, cave painting of a giraffe. Okay, like there's like a carving, like
in the middle of the desert.
In the middle of the desert, they stop. You just go, you look at it. It's right there. You take a picture. Okay, you're not supposed to touch it because it's like ancient carvings. One time we're walking along in the morning, and I pick up a little piece of pottery, and the tour guide, she was like, "Yeah, it's ancient pottery," and then you just put it down. Okay, you just put it down. You're not allowed to take anything out. And so they would just take us on a drive. We'd go somewhere. We'd go to a site. Then we go set up our campsite, whatever, okay? So this one day, Ryan comes up to me and my friend. He's 19 from Canada. Shout out, Ryan. Maybe you're 20 now. I don't know. Like, but, okay. So he's like, guys, do you think, why are they not telling us the schedule for the day? Like, we're like, we get in a car. We drive somewhere. Why are they not telling us the schedule? And I think to myself, I remember when I used to ask myself that question. Like I had this realization like, oh my God, I don't even worry. I don't even wonder if there's a schedule. I'm just like, oh, they tell me to get in the car? Sure, I'm going to get in the car, And I just was like, dude, just live the journey. Enjoy, At some point, you're going to get there. Like, what are you worried about? You're in the Sahara. Where are you going to go? Like, what are you doing? But I just remember, it's like this, we want like certainty or something. I don't know. And I think, I think that was part of the beauty of living in Algeria was like, I eventually learned like, there's no certainty and it's okay. And you can just like vibe. I think that's like nobody can chill harder than an Algerian. It's impossible. You cannot out chill them. Okay. So yeah, that's the great lesson that I learned. And eventually I learned how to chill. And that was my takeaway. Yeah.
Yeah. There ain't nothing like that in the UK or Czech Republic.
No. Or Taiwan.
But you don't think, okay, hold on. But do you think...
Controversial.
But do you think in the Czech Republic, are there like old men chilling? Like,
well, there's old men chilling everywhere.
Exactly. But that's in Algeria. You can be an old man chilling at any time, anywhere. Like, that's universal experience in Algeria, which is beautiful. Right. Besides maybe for the women who are cooking for like 8 hours a day. So...
That is different.
That's also kind of like universal though, right? That's like, in many traditional cultures.
Sure.
Even the US.
Even progressive places, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
Sure. So random question. Did you ever have to wear hair covering in Algeria?
I never did.
You never
actually. Did? So, one time I went to a very famous ancient mosque in Tlemcen in the West, and my friend just put like a ski mask over my head. Or like whatever, one of those like, whatever. Yeah. And I did, because to go into a mosque, you do have to have your hair covered. But I didn't go into that many mosques. So no, Algeria, it's not required. And especially in Oran, they call it like, they would all say like, oh, it's like, it's like kind of like party city. But it kind of reminded me of like Miami, which they would all laugh at me. And I'd be like, you've been to Miami? You don't know. It's so beautiful and like yeah.
Miami has trash everywhere.
Yeah, well, okay, but so it was more loose. Like it was like
so local women sometimes they wouldn't wear it as well.
Oh yeah, no. Okay. Local women, sometimes wouldn't. But I was in a very liberal place.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah. Comparatively. But even when I would go, like there's an amazing community called Gardaya in the Sahara, and highly recommend. That's one way you can go to Algeria is if you get a visa on arrival to go to the Sahara. So Gardaya is like a traditional community, and women wear these like incredible, their hijab is like, it's all white. And traditionally it's like if you were unmarried, you wrap it around. It's one white sheet, and you wrap it around, and both of your eyes are showing, and that means that you're unmarried. But if only one eye is showing, that means you are married.
Oh.
And so like it's almost like, it kind of reminds me of like an Amish community where it's closed and they wear traditional clothing and they have traditional like crafts. Like that's where they make all the rugs. Like it's so amazing. But even there, like I didn't have to wear. But actually, it's kind of more of a touristy area, to be honest, because then people come and visit and stuff. So yeah. So no, I didn't have to, and I didn't feel like it would have been weird for me to do that. Actually, yeah, it was fine for me to just, yeah.
I mean, this has been very, enlightening for both of us. We have no concept of not the schedule and, other things like this.
Yeah.
I've never been to Africa, North Africa, etc. Never learned one of the many different iterations of Arabic, so this is all very cool. All very cool.
Yeah. You guys should go. It's pretty awesome.
All right. Thank you for joining us once again on the ChattyAF podcast, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.